Picture this scenario. You've got this absolute star of a third grader. I mean, they read fluently, their pronunciation is pitch perfect, and they just breeze through chapter books without skipping a single beat. But then you hand them a math word problem, and suddenly, they freeze. They look at you like you just asked them to disarm a bomb, and they get the answer completely wrong. So why does a truly great reader suddenly fail at a seemingly simple math question?
Well, welcome to this explainer where we are going to unravel that exact mystery. Today, we're looking at the nature of reading comprehension in the content areas. The absolute core concept we're unpacking here is that reading is not a one-size-fits-all skill. Actually, it's this incredibly complex, dynamic interaction between the subject matter, the reader's mind, and the text itself.
So, here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the pivot, reading to learn. Then, we'll explore the three lenses of comprehension, the subjects, the mind, and the texts. And finally, we'll wrap up with the actual classroom implications.
All right, let's jump right into part 1, the pivot, reading to learn.
Okay, let's dive into this. Up to about class 3, children are really mostly learning how to read, right? They're mastering decoding, they're recognizing letters, and building that baseline fluency. But around those upper primary years, the educational demand completely flips. Children must now use reading as their main route into learning complex subjects. And this brings us to a massive distinction. On one hand, we have generic content area literacy. These are your everyday strategies useful in any subject, like, finding the main idea of a paragraph. But as subjects get harder, generic strategies just aren't enough anymore. We actually need disciplinary literacy. This is the specialized way an expert actually reads. It is the difference between just reading a historical document for some basic facts and reading it the way a historian does, weighing the source, looking for bias, and really questioning the author's intent.
Moving right along to our second section. Lens 1, the subjects. When a student navigates the social sciences, texts are this really unique mix of narrative and cold, hard facts. They're built heavily around chronology, cause and effect, and multiple perspectives. Think about a student reading a chapter on the 1857 revolt. They literally can't just read it like a bedtime story. To succeed, they must read like a historian. They have to mentally place events on a timeline, relate the paragraphs they're reading to maps of the affected regions, and constantly judge viewpoints. They have to stop and ask, wait, does this paragraph represent a British account or an Indian account? That right there is disciplinary literacy in action. Now, science texts, that's a completely different cognitive puzzle. You're suddenly dealing with incredibly dense technical vocabulary and strict process structures. To read science effectively, a student has to treat it almost like a high-stakes investigation. They must constantly move back and forth between the running text and the visual diagrams. Take a sentence like, blood flows from the right ventricle to the lungs. Honestly, that sentence only truly makes sense when the reader simultaneously traces that exact path on a diagram of the heart right next to it. Synthesizing the text and the visual step by step is absolutely crucial to building one accurate mental model. And then, oh boy, we reach mathematics reading. Math text is incredibly compact. Every single word and every single symbol carries an exact, unbreakable meaning. Furthermore, ordinary, everyday words suddenly take on super precise technical senses. The word product isn't something you buy at the grocery store anymore. The word volume has absolutely nothing to do with how loud your music is. Though, let's be honest, a frustrated student might definitely wish they were just listening to music instead. But the crucial point here is that math requires readers to intentionally slow down. They have to reread slowly to translate those words into mathematical operations. Which brings us right back to our star third grader from earlier. The golden rule of disciplinary literacy in math is simply this: correct maths cannot fix a misread problem. Look at this classic example. Oranges bought at 20 rupees a dozen, sold at 2 rupees each, find the profit percent. If a fluent reader is just using their normal, fast, narrative reading pace, they're going to skim right past the two little words, a dozen. And if they miss a dozen, well, every single piece of math they do afterward is utterly irrelevant. Let's shift gears to section 3, lens 2, the mind, and specifically schema theory. So what exactly is a schema? A schema, or schemata if we're using the plural, is essentially an organized package of knowledge about a topic, object, or event. It's built up from a person's past experiences and safely stored away in their memory. Schema theory tells us something amazing. Comprehension is not simply a mechanical act of decoding letters on a printed page. Not at all. Instead, comprehension is this active meeting point. It happens when the words on the page literally crash into the schemata already sitting inside the reader's mind. You are constantly fitting new information into your existing framework of prior knowledge.
Now, the intellectual history of this concept gives us a fantastic academic foundation without getting bogged down in too much jargon. The famous psychologist Piaget actually first introduced the word schema to describe organized units of knowledge in cognitive development. Then, moving ahead to 1932, Bartlett demonstrated that when readers remember a story, they don't actually recall it word for word. They reconstruct the memory using their own existing knowledge frames. Finally, in the 1980s, cognitive scientists like Rumelhart, Anderson, and Pearson synthesized all of this into the modern schema theory of reading comprehension that educators rely on today. To process all this information, our brain essentially uses three specific tools or schema. First up is content schema. This is your prior knowledge of the actual topic itself. Second is formal schema, which is your understanding of how different texts are organized. Like you inherently know that a fairy tale has a plot and characters, while a science lab report is going to have data and conclusions. Third is linguistic schema, your knowledge of the vocabulary and grammar of the language itself. When these three schema fire together, they power vital cognitive skills. They let you make inferences, predict what the author's going to say next, and organize the new information so you can actually remember it later. Let's look at a really vivid example of content schema in action. Imagine two students reading this exact phrase, "A wicket falling in the last over." Now, a student who has grown up playing or watching cricket instantly feels their heart rate spike, right? They picture the tense finish, the bowler running in, the crowd screaming. Their schema for over, wicket, and batsman is fully activated. But a student with zero cricket schema, they can pronounce every single one of those words perfectly and completely miss the excitement. Similarly, think of a rural, first-generation learner reading a story set in a giant urban shopping mall. If they have no mental picture of an escalator or a food court, their comprehension just derails. They aren't struggling with the words, they are struggling with a missing schema. All right, moving to Section 4. Lens 3, the texts. And this brilliantly illustrates how recognizing these four major text types acts as a roadmap for any reader. Identifying them instantly tells the student which reading strategy to deploy. First, expository texts. Think of a textbook chapter on global warming. The purpose is to inform, so the key skill is finding the main idea and cause and effect structures. Second, narrative texts, like a biography or a novel. The goal is telling a story, so the reader must follow a plot and infer unspoken feelings. Third, transactional texts, like a school notice or an application form. The purpose here is to get something done in real life, so you just need to extract actionable details, like a date or time. Finally, reflective texts, like a personal diary entry. Here, the goal is exploring personal meaning, meaning the reader's key skill is interpreting the writer's deep, introspective insight. Finally, let's bring it all together in Section 5, Classroom Implications. The absolutely crucial point is this. Educators simply cannot assume that all learners arrive in the classroom equally prepared, with the exact same background knowledge. Teachers really must be proactive here. They need to use pre-reading activities like KWL charts or brainstorming sessions to activate that existing schema before the book is even opened. And if that cricket or shopping mall schema is missing, well, the teacher must deliberately build it using pictures, videos, or just open discussion. Furthermore, to make learning truly efficient and engaging, educators should always favor culturally relevant texts that connect directly to a student's own lived experiences. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. If true reading comprehension is really nothing more than ink on a page meeting prior knowledge in the mind, what critical schema are your students missing before they even open the book? It completely changes how we view a struggling reader, doesn't it? They might not need more phonics practice. They might literally just need a picture of an escalator. Thank you so much for diving deep with me on this explainer today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and definitely pay attention to the amazing ways we process the written word.